Thank you, everybody, for attending today. Our goal is to have a great conversation with you all. So we have a bunch of talented and experienced practitioners here, and we're going to talk about some of the challenges we're all facing in the industry. And so your questions are absolutely going to be welcome. We're going to try and leave some time to give us a good, healthy conversation. And we hope to continue that conversation well beyond the panel. So first off, let me talk a little bit about the session today. As you heard, the discussion topic is adopting decentralized models. I think we've all experienced over the past few years, many years even, that the continual demand and growth in demand for data has caused us to figure out how to do better, how to do faster, how to move more efficiently through that process of delivering insight. And one of the innovations that we've seen popular over the past few years has been moving to a more decentralized product team model. And so what we thought we would talk about today are the experiences in adopting that model. What are some of the drivers that organizations have driven organizations, I should say, to explore this model? What are some of the challenges? And we also have a contrarian point of view on the panel. So we were talking about at dinner last night. It might get a little heated. Sit a couple rows back in case chairs start to throw. So just be prepared. So with that, I'd like to have each of the panelists introduce themselves, starting with Jeremy.
Good morning, everyone, or good evening to folks who are online. Jeremy Foreman, Vice President of AI Data and Analytics at Pfizer, covering the research and development organizations.
I got it. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I come from Gilead Sciences. So before I talk about myself, I want to give a bit of background on Gilead Sciences. So we as a company is a biopharmaceutical company with headquarters in Foster City, right? Our commitment lies in scientific innovation for life-threatening, disease, both on prevention and treatment, right? We focus on HIV treatment, viral hepatitis, and also cancer, right? As for me, I'm the head of data and AI platform and enterprise data governance at Gilead. So in my role, I do oversee the data and AI strategy for Gilead, and I also oversee the development and operation of the enterprise data and AI platform as a strategic data and AI backbone for Gilead Sciences.
Great. Morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. I'm Eric Dressler. I'm the head of data at Parkland. Has anyone heard of Parkland Corporation? A couple? Okay. When I first heard of Parkland, it was I live in Edmonton, Canada. There's a Parkland County, and it's maybe 30 people in the municipal government out there, and I thought it was from Parkland County. I'm like, oh, that's interesting, but no, it's a big company. We're at number 2 market share in Canada for fuel. We do supply, demand, so we purchase a bunch of oil, distribute it, optimize it, send it to channels to retail outlets. We also own M&M meat shops in Canada. It's a frozen food company, and we're a big kind of merger and acquisition company. So my background's in analytics. Last 5 or 6 years, I've been in data, standing up data practices, and now I'm head of data at Parkland. So looking forward to today.
Hello, all. Adam Lundberg, VP of Data Services at Total Wine & More. Anybody customer, fan? Excellent. We appreciate your patronage. I am, as I said, VP of Data Services. I'm responsible for our enterprise data platform, enterprise reporting, and then our data science across the organization.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. So I'd like to start with the question of why. What were some of the factors and expectations in exploring a distributed model? And Nghi, you talked a little bit about the mission of Gilead Sciences. I'd like you to explain how supporting knowledge and insight is important to you, and how that made you start to explore moving to a more decentralized product team model.
Yeah, sure. So let me start by unpacking on the decentralized model a little bit, because I think it's dangerous to misunderstand this term, right? So in a centralized approach, the whole data management and processing is in a way consolidated in one single system and managed by one single team. You have one team, one platform, one governance, and that's that, right? Now, in a decentralized approach, what we aim to do is we distribute the data management and processing and ownership of the data to the domain or to the business unit. But at the same time, we try to lower the total cost of ownership and standardization of technology through what we call the self-serve data infrastructure. And also, we want to achieve enterprise data integration, enterprise data standard, enterprise data interoperability through federated governance. I got to get that out of the way because if we misunderstand that, it's dangerous, right? Now, talking about our contact in Gilead. So when I joined Gilead Sciences more than 3 years ago, we started on this whole we call that the decentralization journey, right? In data and AI management, we were presented with several opportunities. Number one, there was growing partnership. There was strategic partnership. There was new acquisition, and there was a portfolio of new medicine, right? And there was a transformation journey going on, and there was a company-wide focus on deriving value from data and analytics. And that led to the need of, and this is the key word, scaling data management and governance in the company, right? Now, these opportunities come with, they came with a set of challenges. Number one, we had a lot of data. We had a lot of data in the company. However, the data that we had, it was filled with noise, right? It didn't have good quality, right? That's number one. Number two, we have a fragmented data landscape. We have data silo from across different domains, right? And funny enough, there's a team, right, in Gilead at that point in time, trying to fix that problem by trying to create, I call a centralized data management as a service team, right? By providing centralized, data management capability, and that lead to high cost of data ops, and that lead to that team being a bottleneck as well, right? Last problem that we had when I first joined the company was we have a super complicated AI, BI, data technology and tooling landscape. You give me one technology, I can confidently tell you that we had that technology back then in the company, right? So that was our challenges. Now, so what do we do with that, right? So we both come to a realization that we had reached a tipping point in terms of scaling our data management and governance with our legacy systems. With my prior experience in IBM, right, which has a very different context, right, compared to Gilead. However, with my prior experience, I learned that having a monolithic platform, a monolithic or centralized approach doesn't work for Gilead, right? And I learned that top-down governance itself wouldn't work for Gilead either, okay? So we try to, explore a decentralized model, but we need a framework. We need a framework to execute on that, right? Because again, decentralization it comes with a lot of risk. It's a dangerous term, right? So we look out there and we see that there was an emerging, we call that the architectural and organizational framework called data mesh, right? And we adopted that. Well, there was a lot of challenge. There has been challenges, in our transformation journey. However, time has proven that we have achieved a significant success, with that approach, and the rest is just history. That's why I'm here.
Fantastic. Thank you. So, and if you didn't catch it yesterday, Jeremy gave a great presentation on his experiences at Seagen and now Pfizer on the journey. So, Jeremy, if you wouldn't mind contrasting your experiences to what Nghi just shared with us.
Yeah, no, thanks, John. And I really appreciate Nghi's response. And I think the importance of defining decentralization and centralization. I also think it's not a fixed point. It's not binary, right? I don't think any organization is ever fully centralized or fully decentralized. Based on what I've seen just in prior organizations at Seagen and at Pfizer, every team across the company is a little different. What we're seeing mostly in R&D, but some in commercial as well, is that the user base is much more sophisticated than they've been in the past. People are being hired. They have master's degrees, PhDs. They're better at R than my team. They're better at Python than a lot of folks, right? They know how to use cloud services. So what value would we actually have to bring when they actually know how to build AI models, machine learning models, manage their data better than we do, because they understand the context, right? Data has no value outside of context, right? And so it's really important to understand that. So we have this sophisticated user base that's growing. Tools are getting much easier for them to use and cheaper. And in order to scale and increase speed, putting everything through a centralized IT organization and thinking you can scale that is relatively impossible. Now, what we're doing is, as we talk about technology architecture, composability, evolutionary architecture, those sorts of things, we're taking the same approach to our org design, right? So we've created, we did this at Legacy Decision, we're going to do it again within Pfizer, but we decentralized our team, right? My team, my partners' teams inside of our digital organization, and made them very domain-specific, kind of the team topologies model. If you've followed the team topologies book, which I absolutely love and I recommend, created products, we call them squads. And each squad is dedicated to a specific point in Pfizer or a Pfizer R&D or Legacy Decision's value stream, and they're responsible for that particular area. The goal isn't to build our team and grow. It is to enable our end users in the way they need to be enabled to take on that decentralization responsibility. But I'll tell you, finance is much, much different than preclinical research, right? They need a different level of support, different types of tools, different intention on knowledge transfer, building them up, building that culture. I said this yesterday, I firmly believe this after doing this for 25 years, is that the most scalable innovation is culture change in our space, right? I firmly believe that. And why is culture change and innovation? Is because I think the way we've approached it in the past is a lot more in terms of user adoption or learning how to tools. I think we fundamentally need to think differently in the world of AI and the speed at which things are moving. I think if we can get better at adopting new technologies, having people own more of their data management, really feel and treat it as a product, I think that's how organizations scale end to end, and that's what we're going for. So I think it's also really important to understand, I said this earlier, but it's not a fixed point. Right? Like there's no done in this game, right? This is a constant evolution, which is also a major culture change.
Fantastic. And Eric, you're starting this journey with Parkland. You've been putting your plans in place and starting to execute, and you've talked about the idea of establishing that common platform to enable those independent teams. Can you share your strategy with us?
Sure. Yeah, and what Jeremy just said, ditto. So I think for us at Parkland, I came in maybe 6 months ago. The first thing was like, hey, let's set up a proper data operating model. So 3 squads, cross-functional teams, data engineers, data scientists with data product owners. Like that was the number one role that we wanted to fill. And we did a bit of a strategic resource plan. We said, okay, which are commoditized roles, which ones are not. Parkland's a little bit different. I have maybe 50 people on my team, 10 are employees. There's an OpEx budget and constraint. We're a public company that we manage to. And we have 40 contractors from 10 different agencies, which is insane. So we have to consolidate that. But we set up that team, put the more strategic roles as product owners in my management team. So that was important. So now we had productivity. We could measure our velocity. We're treating it like a true product management team. The second step was like, hey, everyone at Parkland, you have to build on a single platform. So we're modernizing our platform, but we wanted to make sure that everyone built on our one platform. So how many people out here have legacy systems that you're trying to corral, like legacy data warehouses? So that was one thing we had to do is hey, everyone, build on our platform, and let's make sure that you we can build the services on top of that. So AI, ML, reporting services, et cetera. So we're enabling the team, just like Jeremy said, we're enabling the team to build on our platform and then gain productivity as such.
Great. So when I reached out to Adam and asked him to be on the panel, and I gave him the topic, he said, I'm not decentralizing. I'm actually going in the opposite direction. I said, that'll be perfect, because as you've heard from everybody here, there is no end state. There's a constant evolution, and we're figuring out what makes us most successful. And I thought it'd be great to get a little fight going on the stage. So, Adam, tell us why we're wrong.
Yeah, I was told to start off by saying these guys are all idiots. But no, they're absolutely not. And I think Jeremy's comment about we're getting to the point where it's a spectrum, right? And it's different for everybody is absolutely true. And for us, when I came into Total Wine about 2.5 years ago, the underpinnings of a centralized data warehouse were there, but not fleshed out. We do actually have a decentralized analytics model, which I'm actually trying to centralize as well for a number of reasons. But in looking at it and going through the decision-making process of, okay, should we move towards a more decentralized model or centralized one? There were a number of factors that kept on coming up. And a few of them are things like specialized resources. We at Total Wine, we have a very small corporate footprint relative to the size of the organization. Our corporate offices are 6-7% of the total headcount in the organization, and so every department in headquarters has very small teams. Everybody already wears a number of hats, and outside of the technology space, there's not really any data engineering, data architecture, data science, cloud architecture, software engineering, any of that. And so in order to really move to a much more decentralized model, we'd either have to train up individuals or get each department to invest in small teams to do that, and not just the teams, the leadership, in order to ensure that things are going to continue to move forward appropriately, and their teams are going to be coached and mentored in an appropriate and sustainable way. Additionally, once you get past that, ambiguous ownership, who actually owns the different data elements. We're a retail organization. Who owns our transactions data? Is it the stores? Is it our digital team for online orders? And customer data, is that the marketing team? Again, is that the digital team? Where it comes in, we have data across the organization that is very interrelated. The business operates much more holistically. All the departments support that one sort of P&L. And then you get into more derived metrics and derived data. Gross margin is a great example. It has elements of cost, it has elements of transaction, but it also have to look into other factors that come in from other organizations, whether it's promotions and deals from that we offer customers or that we get from our vendors. And so how does all of that work together and get into the next problem, which is standardization, right? So, that's a problem that everybody has. But for us, both in terms of setting up that standardization and then enforcing it, was a really big hurdle as well. And then finally, I would say asymmetric priorities. So each department has their own sort of goals, which all align to the corporate goals, but sometimes those can be counter to each other. It's actually what's best for the organization as a whole might not be best for a specific department. And how do you ensure that those each department is actually investing in making the appropriate decisions from a corporate standpoint, while still allowing them the innovation and sort of more decentralized approach.
So I think you hit on you hit on many great points, but three in particular that I would love to highlight and hear from the rest of the panel on. So Adam talked about specialization and how the distribution of teams increases pressure on getting those special skills. You also talked about ownership, data ownership as a challenge. And then you talked about the investment, the will of the prioritization of the organization. And I'd love to hear from the rest of the panel. What are some of your thoughts on that? How did you deal with these challenges? Did you find them challenges? And how do you deal with them in a decentralized situation?
I'm happy to go. I think I love asymmetric priorities. I think that's incredible. I love that. I'm going to
great euphemism,
right? And one of the challenges we have is exactly that. Everybody has a different priority. And what I'm reflecting on as I'm sitting up here on the MIT campus, this book by Dr. Jeannie Ross on enterprise architecture that came out in 2006 that changed my life. But it really talked about operating model. And I think some of the things you're hearing here is how does that data is a reflection of the organization's operating model, right? And are you a diverse operating model or unified, right? I really think that's kind of what I'm starting to take away, and that in a company like Pfizer, 90,000 people, priorities are very distributed, it's very entrepreneurial, centralized decisions on priorities don't happen, right? Everybody is given their own priorities within the division, and that trickles down through the organization. So to try to actually change that culture, that the real operating model, the way the organization works, it isn't realistic. And so how do you fit in the slipstream of the way the organization works, and empower people with data ownership, and in those places where that really doesn't work, IT, we take on a little bit more of a stringent role, but really try to have the data governance, the ownership sit outside of IT.
Great.
Maybe if I could just add to that. So the point on we have to meet people where we are and use platform and process as an approach. That's kind of our standpoint. So if you think of supply and trading and optimization, someone came to me a week ago, the head of supply, saying, hey, we have a $200 million problem, can you help me? And that's like reinforcement learning, optimization, digital twins. So that group doesn't know about that. So what we would do is say either do it ourselves or grab, the best in class. Plug for Thoughtworks there, maybe. I don't know, we just kicked off a project for them, but one of the top partners to go and help us with this problem. So they source it through our platform and process. We have certified vendors, so they don't go with Accenture and build their own thing, and then we have to put it back on AWS, which actually happened. They built in Azure, and we had to sustain it over at, or repatriate it and then sustain it over at AWS. So I think the meeting people where they are is very, very important. Finance, for example, self-serve reporting. They want self-serve reporting. That's it. They want the capability. Health and safety, we want to prevent fatalities and incidents. They have no analytic capability, so we have to dive in a little bit deeper there. So that's why I think it's important to have your product-based structures and have squads that you can deploy with different skill sets. And also governance is big too. Enterprise governance will probably fall to my team, but again, very centralized in process, but ownership at the security level, at the architecture level, et cetera. So I think that's important in the model.
Yeah, I want to add to that a little bit, and this is going to be a controversial point. Okay, it doesn't matter whether you go with the centralized or decentralized approach, you would face with similar challenges, right? In terms of setting enterprise standards for data, for technology, in terms of setting boundaries, in terms of scaling, and in terms of upskilling. Now, in the world of decentralization, these issues, especially on the standard side and on the upskilling side, are in a way intensified. And here is a controversial, point, and here is what makes us successful in Gilead. The path to decentralization start with forming a central authority to align the organization on governance, on technologies, on architectures, and on global policies. Without that, it's not going to work from my experience, right? As an example, right? You go to the business and you say, hey, trust us. We're going to do business with us. How can I trust you? Deliver value. it's going to take you at least a couple of years to deliver some value to the business. They cannot wait. The business cannot wait, right? So there has to be certain support from the top management to form that central authority to help, aligning, I wouldn't say enforce, aligning technology, architecture, governance, right, and skill across the company, and start from there. And that, to me, is the most important element that guarantee our success at Gilead, that some other company may not have the luxury to have. So,
You can come sit on this side of the stage now.
Well,
he's still the centralized guy. So.
the thing that I take away immediately from this conversation is the point that you've all been on journeys in the organizations. You're moving from a series of challenges, impediments, to a state where you're able to deliver more successfully, partner with your business stakeholders, and create that value. So in the spirit of that, and you've shared some of these already, but I'd love to hear from everybody, and starting with you, Adam, what is that key learning on the journey for you? What is something that in embarking on this mission that you said, I didn't know that before? This was a new learning or a new experience for me.
In this panel and actually thinking about it, yeah, I think that one of the key things is that I sort of had in the back of my head when I was thinking about this, but has really crystallized and I've moved even further down the path, is that it's obviously not a one size fits all, but that each challenge that I stated, that actually everybody here stated, isn't insurmountable. You can absolutely identify ways in which to address and actually overcome each one of these. But the real question then becomes, is it valuable? Is the juice worth the squeeze, right? Are you actually, in going through any one of these or overcoming any one of these challenges or going down any one of these paths, actually adding the most value to the organization? And so that's why I think that it is a spectrum, right? That's not, even I'm not gonna say, yep, absolutely centralization all the way for everyone. That's ridiculous. For our organization, though, because of both the challenges and how the organization operates, a lot of the challenge or the struggles that and constraints that the organization faces, it is I believe the most sort of cost efficient, most bang for your buck in terms of approach versus the ultimate goals. And I think that's one of the key takeaways is, it's not my situation, my experience is not, well, it is unique. It's not the end-all be-all. It's not the right answer for everyone. And in fact, it may be the right answer for only me in my current role.
Great. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I think, I look at it a couple of ways. I think what I've learned is, so I've come from kind of a centralization structure, and there's different reasons why. It had to do with governance, budget constraints, maturity level, analytic-wise, of the organization within, different groups. That's one thing. But then the other thing that I've learned about is to be nimble, right? So I think we're looking at this all of it's one thing and one big change and that's it. I think part of what you need to do is look at the metrics. Again, assess your velocity, your productivity. How much work are you getting done? What type of value is it providing the organization? So look at those metrics, try different models, see if it works. Take one group, try a decentralized approach. One group, maybe a hybrid, and see how it works. So I think part of the thinking is don't think that you have to solve the entire problem and boil the ocean. That's another piece. And then the other thing is make sure that you're bringing the business with you. So if you think about a centralized model, what are the benefits of it? Well, you have strong analytics, but what are the defaults of that? Or the defects of that? Then you don't have the domain knowledge. But then if you decentralize, you have the domain knowledge, but you don't have the analytic prowess that you'd want. So you almost have to think, how can you achieve both? And that's ultimately where we landed is let's go hybrid. Let's centralize through the platform and processes, but let's enable the users and meet them where they are. So if it's reporting, if it's machine learning, if it's just access to data because they have a strong analytic practice, that's great. And then how do you create a framework around that? and then provide data as a service, which we're trying to do, like build the UI, UX with the marketplace, get them access to the data, and then build, some work can go to us, but hey, guess what? If you have the budget and we can pass you along to this certified vendor, they've gone through it, MSAs, they have security clearance, don't go build your own thing, but follow the rules. Like build it this way so we don't have to repatriate and do that work afterwards. So that's kind of some of our learnings. But trial and error, right? A/B testing.
I have 4 key lessons learned through the journey that I can share with you. Number 1, it is very important that we try to change the mindset of the company or of the data community in the company in terms of treating and thinking of data as a product. The product mindset is very, very useful because you don't produce data just for no purpose. You don't do that, right? It's a waste of time. You got to have a clear purpose before you do something. You produce data to serve that purpose. Number 2, on the mindset itself, right? The product thinking, the platform thinking is important too, but it's also very important for us to embrace the operating models as well. We got to have the right operating model, meaning the organization need to understand, right? If they're on this journey, they will want to adopt our platform as a service, the self-serve platform as a service, instead of trying to go and build their own platform, right? And we got to also embrace, the concept of federated governance. Right? You cannot scale data management with, a full centralized governance, right? So the key word here is federated. Now, so moving on to, lesson learned number 2, I think it's very important for us to partner with the domain or the business unit that has the most, the highest level of maturity when it comes to data management. Partner with them, work with them, right? Because decentralization wouldn't work in an organization where we do not have the right level of maturity. Okay, so partner with them, start small, focus on high-yield capability, right, and go from there. Number 3 is a little bit technical, but as you are challenged with the question of build versus buy, here's what we do, right? Prioritize buy and not build things from scratch unless you have a very unique, specific need. Well, unless you're from Netflix, as an example, why are you that unique, right? So, and then focus on building integration between these technology to form the end-to-end mesh architectures, okay? And last but not least, I would, echo what Eric said about eventually all of this is a trial and error. How do you know that you will be successful? How do you know that this is enough, right? Because this is a journey, there's no end, right? The way to measure yourself is to come up with the right set of metrics. The right set of metrics is very important. And then measure your success, from there. The hardest part of, defining that is really about defining the right metrics. You define the wrong metrics, you're going to model the wrong behavior. An example of which is, if you define the success metric as having the most number of data product in the mesh, that is the wrong metric, because people just go and build data product that mean nothing, right? But if you add one more dimension to that, build data product, and also the number of data product that are adopted and used, right? And more importantly, the number of data product that are adopted and used across domain, as an example. That is truly how you realize, the success of data mesh, as an example. So those are the 4 key lessons learned through the journey that I can share. So.
Awesome. Those are great. All of them. And product thinking is, you stole one of my 3, so just kidding. It's just super important. So I think I always go back to culture lately. It can't seem to get past that when I think about this type, the most important thing. Great outcomes come from great teams, but great teams don't necessarily come from great outcomes, right? Like, that's not sustainable. Right, and we're talking about a journey. We're talking about the long game here, right? And so, delivering that one first product or that one AI model. What are you going to do next? How are you going to scale that? Right? What's the sustainability? And to me, that's great teams. And it's not just the team that reports to you, but it's the extended team, because we're talking about multidisciplinary teams that aren't just a IT team. It's an IT team with subject matter experts, really trying to build that integrated partnership with the business team so that it feels like one team. I think that is goes back to what's the most scalable innovation. And I really, truly think it's that, because to Nghi's point, this buy versus build question, things are changing every day, all the time. The project that you're working on that you're excited about for building the AI thing you're building, in 6 months, it's going to be a product you can buy, right? So how do you get into this learning culture where you're thinking big, starting small, and learning fast? And it all comes down to team culture.
Great. Thank you, panelists. And we have a bit of time left, so let's get to some questions. Hands. There we go.
I'm going to ask you to please give your name and the company that you're with, and if your question is directed to the panel or to an individual.
Hi, Ashish Bajpayee from John Deere. I think the question is for the panel. So you shared a lot about centralized versus decentralized versus hybrid, and looks like an implicit consensus is hybrid operating model is the way to go. Now, this is in the world of traditional AI, or as Tom Davenport says, analytics AI. Now, as we start moving towards the world of Gen AI, where accessibility of AI is in reach of all of the business users, is it going to get more complex than this? We are already talking a lot of complexities that maybe centralized tools, processes, platform capabilities, because those are specialized skills. But at the same time, the specialized domain skills lie in the hands of those subject matter experts. Now, when those subject matter experts now have accessibility to AI, is this operating model going to get more complex? How do you see that for tomorrow?
Yeah, maybe I'll start. Great question. So I think of Gen AI, and just thinking back to the conference, it's almost like Gen AI fatigue a little bit. I don't know if everyone's getting that, but it's sort of a weird conundrum, because I feel like we're not gaining the productivity. So immediately when you're thinking about what to do, ChatGPT, list out, generate some ideas, so productivity gains, etc. So I think that you should consider that. But with Gen AI, I think it'll be interesting, because now people have access to tools like Gen AI, which can scan databases and wherever and come up with some natural language. So there's a security issue with that, number one. From a governance standpoint, is like, how do you make sure when you set up a Gen AI tool, you have a sandbox that is only related to health and safety, if you're a health and safety analyst. So I think that's one thing, is it opens up, just like BI did 10 years ago, opens up the doors for the lack of governance, because everyone can now access the data. It's the same idea. So I think now Gen AI, it's even worse, that people can, worse and better, but people can now access that data. I think that's one piece. So I think the other piece that you'd want to think about is it does open up both ways. So the data side now understands business domain knowledge a little bit more, and then domain or business people understand data a little bit more. So I think it's going to hit both ways, and then it ties back to a governance model. But at the end of the day, it will gain productivity, but there's risk with that.
And Jeremy, do you want to talk about some of your experiences particularly?
So first I was going to say, if our organizations would just do what we say to do, right, it wouldn't be so complicated. Right? I think. But how do I want to answer this? I think that it will potentially get more complicated. But I also think that, what Eric was talking about, the governance, responsible AI, the risk to companies, and the long-term value of data curation. And I think more companies are becoming aware at C level. I know at Pfizer now the CEO is talking about data infrastructure, data harmonization in a way that is all about empowering AI. So I actually think we have a window of opportunity here that we didn't have in the past. I mean, how many of us tried and failed at data governance programs, right? Boss, right? A former boss would tell me it's a ground war without an exit strategy, right? So I think we have an opportunity now, because of the unbridled exuberance around AI. I actually think the leadership in this room at our companies have an opportunity that we haven't had in the past to actually kind of deal with the complexity, because it is going to continue to grow in terms of, consumer-based data tools like your Apple iPhone experience that people are going to have. But I also think that there's a growing awareness of that, of the data is food for AI kind of Andrew Ng approach, where it's super important now to invest in data.
Great.
All right.
Next question.
Just 1 second.
My name's Adam Leonard. I am the Chief Analytics Officer for the Texas Workforce Commission. And we operate or are operating in a hybrid environment with centralized area of excellence and then data analytics resources out in our main program areas. And what I'm curious about is if you have any thoughts around how to help those groups, that hybrid structure, stay in alignment in terms of what they're doing and lessons learned, and basically not only preventing redundancy but also preventing kind of contrary results.
Centralization? No. It's a great question. It's actually, in a lot of ways, how we at Total Wine are operating right now, where we do have a lot of the data centralized, but the analytics is much more pushed out and run by the business. And sort of the way that we've been moving towards and trying to address that exact sort of situation is, because we do have a centralized sort of data function, is to standardize the metrics and the ways in which those teams are able to access the data. And so at the very least, they're accessing all the same data. And in addition, trying to build a community of practice from a reporting and analytics standpoint, where we're starting to bring together all of those analytics teams, not necessarily in a centralization format, but to try and ensure that we're identifying sort of those areas of overlap and try to reduce them, right? As well as ensure, even though we're standardizing the data and the metrics that they're pulling, they're doing their own analysis on top of that and actually making sure that anytime they're pulling sales data or creating rates on margin or some of our how we actually operate. We have an interesting operating model, but to make sure that they're calculating all of those in a similar way. So really trying to build those types of communities of practice. And I think that from a hybrid perspective, like you still need sort of that ability to connect the disparate sort of teams together and ensure that you are being as efficient as possible.
Tom, you had a question.
Yeah, so can I add to that a little bit, just to add to the answer a little bit? I think that's a great question, and that's a problem that we, in a way, had to deal with throughout our journey as well. When we talk about hybrid approach, let's unpack on that. What does it actually mean, right? What it means is, in a way, you try to centralize where you can, normally within a domain or business unit, but from across, different business unit, you try to decentralize so that everyone participates in that whole, decentralized architecture. That's what it does, right? How do you, in a way, reduce redundancy? As for anything in life, you want to create incentive for them to do that. And how do you do that? You look at the common need from across different domains. Here's a common need. Everyone will need to have a data catalog. Okay, and we do want to have, ideally, an enterprise data catalog, in the company, and that's the current situation in Gilead. We do have an enterprise data catalog. Okay, now through that common enterprise data catalog, that we can stand up and support the organization. We build the contract and interface, and through the contract interface, we enforce different teams to follow the contract interface to have that data discoverable within the enterprise data catalog would benefit them, right? So that is, in a way, you can drive the consensus on the standard and on the architectural pattern to motivate people to do that. And obviously, that's on top of all the community practice, the training, right? To Adam's point, that we got to train people as well. But the point here is we got to create incentive for people, right, to reach the consensus. So.
Well, with that, we are out of time. It's been an amazing panel. I saw a lot of hands up. So if you want to put your questions in the Whova app, I understand the panel is willing to answer those questions. And if you enjoyed this session, please leave us some feedback, and let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you, everyone. That's right.